Hello, everybody. I am joined today by Lynn Serpico, who just recently completed a 33-year career in global risk and insurance, where she held several positions and served in the world's largest companies. She's transitioned to purpose-driven advisory and board work now, and she's actively building a portfolio career where she can deliver results and actual meaningful impact. And I'm very excited for this conversation, Lynn, because we always have good conversations when we get to chat. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Talk to me about your career though, because I feel like bios and LinkedIn, we get like that not watered down version, but kind of like the sterilized version of everything. Talk to me about like how you grew over the course of your career, how you made decisions to make big changes, because you've had some great transitions over time. Talk about your trajectory.
I think it's a great way to look at a careers, and I love the question, Mark, because you're right. LinkedIn is just very sort of chronological and linear. So I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, right? And really, for me in my career, and I think a lot of people's careers, it was very layered and nuanced, and I did a lot of things at the same time, right? So when I was an art history major undergrad, I had visions of, working at Sotheby's or in an auction house. And I had an internship there. And that is just not the way my career went. When I was graduating, I did all sorts of interviewing with different art galleries. And candidly, I was going to be, eating ramen noodles till I was 30, if I did that. And that did not appeal to me. I hadn't eaten enough of them, through undergrad. And I started looking at just some other opportunities. And like so many people in the insurance business, my brother was working at Chubb, which is a great company then, a great company now, had an amazing training program. And he really convinced me to just come in and interview, to sort of I think he thought it was more of a proper job than working in an art gallery or something like that. So, the responsible choice with a 401k and things like that.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
I loved the people at Chubb. I thought they were great. Very specifically, the hiring manager of the group that I was joining, I just thought he was terrific. And I felt a sense of belonging and a place that I could learn. It was incredibly professional. They invested so much. So that's really how my career started in the insurance industry. They invested so much in their young talent. And some of the folks that I met doing that are still good friends today. There's still, relationships I called on throughout my 33 years. And so really when I look at the real story, it was about just that. Saying yes to an opportunity when it arose, even if it wasn't super clear, right? Hey, just come in and meet some people, see if you like it, interview. Then once I was in the role, volunteering to do things, right, that maybe were a little bit outside of the scope of your role. Really not being afraid to sort of break the hierarchy a little bit and get to know sort of some senior leaders and learn to sort of talk about yourself and advocate for yourself, but also be humble and learn new things from other people. So I think with those sort of thoughts in mind is how I really kind of went from thing to thing to thing. But for me, and I worked at Chubb, then I worked at Travelers. You can see it all on, LinkedIn, two great companies in the industry. Also PwC, another great company in sort of the insurance space. So I feel like I was always in a good corporate environment where there was a lot of opportunity. But where I really hit my stride is when I worked at Marsh, another, top tier company, that I started doing client work. And I started exclusively, they called it back then, it was their client executive practice that I moved into. But, I had already been working for like 12 or 13 years at this point, right? Sort of with that spirit in mind of trying something new and, always learning and, finding opportunity where you were. Also layering on top of that, at that time, I was getting my MBA at night, right? I didn't want to stop working. I felt like my career was going in a good direction. I was enjoying it. So I spent about 3.5 years at night, really long days, lots of weekends, doing that. So as I sort of intellectually was expanding my skill set, I mentioned I was an art history major undergrad. I really did need a little business acumen, right? That was very helpful for me to take accounting classes and statistics classes and economics classes. And it really rounded out my skill set from that perspective. But when I really got into that client role, and it was someone who just recognized that maybe I would be good at that. And I have to tell you, I was the youngest by far in the group, probably the least experienced, but I just went after it with gusto because it really was what I liked doing. It gave me such strong purpose. And I always felt like I had this genuine interest in those clients and I really wanted them to do well. And if I showed up, I wanted it to be better for them. And I just took that with me, whether it was a meeting, a trip, a document, delivering on, just what we would call in our business, just renewals and, the basics of, the service that we were sort of delivering. I just, took it and I ran with it and I loved it. And that's really where I finally hit my sweet spot and said, okay, this is what I'm really good at and this is what I like doing. And then the rest is sort of history from there, and the advice that I would give anyone is find it, right? Just keep going and you'll find it. Don't get discouraged. There's something good that comes from every situation, even if it's the worst situation. And look, I had
Yes.
terrible situations. I also had amazing situations, just like everybody in their career. But the good ones and the bad ones sort of add up to getting you to the right place. And I would say that's really a whole combination in my career is how that happened, but always sort of looking forward, learning, not getting discouraged, which is hard to do sometimes, but really finding, what it is that you're good at, where you can really contribute. And then you can also help others contribute at that level too, if you're really good at it and you can kind of show the way. So, I mean, that's
Absolutely.
I guess the real story of the, what that you might not see on LinkedIn.
This, I want to say, the first thing that was so interesting to me, I did not know this about your story, is your brother bringing you in
He
and
did.
saying, like, just come on, just come eat because I would like to
Yeah.
shout out siblings here. My sister is the one who had the idea for everything that has been my life for the past almost 10 years now of doing what I do. She said, when I found myself unemployed, and like freaking out and trying to
Right.
figure out what was next. She said, well, why don't you start a business helping people with resumes? You've always done that. Through college and grad school,
Right.
I just help people, friends and family, because I'm good at it. And I figured, sure, why not? She said, start a business. And I said, I don't think that's a thing. Then I found out it was a thing. I went out and I earned, a resume certification through the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches. I built my business resume ready, and now I have the boardroom working with these senior level leaders doing a lot of the same things, and it's all because of siblings. So thank you, siblings, for getting us on these trajectories.
It's a great connection. And I have found in the insurance business, over the 33 years that I was in that industry, is for the most part, siblings, children, friends and family, right? Sort of the friends and family plan, I would call it. They got the industry. They understood that this was a great career, that there's just so many different facets of it. And they were always sort of the best employees and they were loyal and they sought opportunity and they kind of had these built-in mentors, right? So I'm a huge fan. So yeah, kudos to you and your sister. And I certainly, if not for my brother, and who was, by the way, only a year older than me. He had been working for all of 1 year, but he had been interning for all through college, and I wouldn't have. And now we've got a sister-in-law who's in the industry, and you kind of it all piles on. But it is a great place to have a wonderful career. Yeah.
The other thing that really stood out to me about that story and kind of how you landed in increasingly important roles, right? Roles with greater responsibility, greater leadership, was that willingness to just go meet people, put yourself in rooms where the people mattered. I was chatting with a close kind of personal mentor of mine, and it was really interesting because what I realized after meeting with him several different times is I went, this might be the most wealthy person that I have ever met in my entire life. And you would never know it from, what he puts out there. But I kind of started putting the pieces together. And his story, it was very much the same, where he was like, look, I was bottom of the totem pole, absolutely like no power over anything. But I saw these men and women in leadership positions and I wanted to be them. So I just started getting in rooms where they were, meeting them, interacting with them, not as peers. Obviously, there is a discrepancy in power, but he said treating them very much like people and learning from them, being willing to listen, and just being in that orbit is what pulled him up because he was able to demonstrate I have the skills, I have the knowledge, I can operate at this level, I can speak to you on the same level, even though I'm kind of way down here. And suddenly it was promotion after promotion after promotion to, creating new positions that didn't exist for him.
Mhm.
And that's how he grew in his career. And it sounds like you did a lot of the same thing. Like, let me just meet these people and get to know people who matter.
I did a lot of that, and I think it's a couple things, right? His story is very similar in that you just have to, they're people, right? All of these individuals that you've met, and I have so many funny stories of being so out over my skis, maybe in a client situation or in a boardroom situation where I think, wow, they have so much, they know so much more about this than I do. But you can find something in common with almost anyone, right? I was at a client dinner, and these were, super, super, I would say super, you would know all of their names, let's just say, and all the companies they worked for in a certain industry. And I was so out of my depth, didn't have a lot of experience in the industry. They had IPO'd many of the companies that, we all use every day, let's just put it that way. And they were just talking at, sort of these super cerebral intellectual levels about all the ins and outs of the business. Finally, I just turned to one of the guys. We were at this dinner, and I said, wow, do you work out? You look in really good shape, right? Do you work out? And suddenly, everyone started talking about their workouts, right? Everyone started talking about what they did to sort of manage their time as senior executives. Everybody talked about the challenges of, being a good leader, being a good parent, right? Being a good sort of taking care of yourself. And so all of a sudden it neutralized a dinner where otherwise I think I would have had to sit in stunned silence, right? And then we sort of started talking a little bit and eased back into that business conversation. So it's just, right, the imposter syndrome is real, but at the end of the day, we're all so much more similar than we are different, right? And finding sort of that common ground. And again, though, being genuinely interested in the individual and also intellectually curious about, oh, help me understand a little bit more about what you do. Like, what does your day-to-day look like? Again, it's that willingness to learn and not really know. And just always doing that. Like, so to your story, finding a way to sort of be there and engage, and it's really rewarding. And people also appreciate authenticity, and they also appreciate just sort of that genuine interest. You can tell the difference, right? When you're talking to someone, I can tell the difference. And there was no way I was going to outmaneuver them in their area of expertise or really offer anything really compelling to that conversation in what they were talking about, because I had virtually sort of no knowledge of it. So how do you kind of reach that common ground? And I think that was a skill that I relied on really heavily throughout my career. But also for me, it was very natural because I did try to be as authentic as possible. And I also really just looked at every individual and every relationship as just an individual in a relationship, right? Not here's your title, here's my title, or here's your net worth, here's maybe what that can't matter, because you've got to find that sort of common ground where you can, move forward together.
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting to the best leaders that I meet, the people who engage me in those really meaningful ways, those always end up being the leaders that make the most impact on other people. And I think that that's where there's always some like misalignment, right? Is
Yes,
that like I do my job, but I feel like I'm having no impact. And
sure.
so, like, talk about that leadership style that you feel like allows you to feel aligned with what you do, feel like you're making an impact, like actually like help other people grow. Because this is something you said before too. You can help other people grow. And I think that type of attitude is the thing that makes people good leaders. And I don't know if it's innate or if it's learned, but talk to me about like the leadership aspects throughout your career and how you've built a leadership style and approach of your own.
So it's a great question, and it's one of the things when you have these inflection points where I very purposely decided to retire from my operator role with the purpose of moving toward board work and a portfolio career. Not I didn't retire to although I play a lot of tennis, but like to play tennis every day and then sit on the beach every day, right? Like those are great. Those are great things, maybe later. But I really did because I wanted to do something different, right? So I think that's important to note. Um, but when you actually have this retirement, on paper, people start telling you things that you never knew, right? And I had two individuals tell me so I was a client leader and I was also a people leader, right? So similar but different. But this is a people leader, the various teams. Two different people, and it really just hit home so hard. And because I didn't realize it, said to me, totally unrelated, Lynn, you changed my life. You don't know, you changed my life. Like, I get a little choked up even because I'm picturing the face when it was two men, and I said, change what? And they said, you changed my life. And they said, you were the leader that now I can take care of my family in a different way. You saw ability in me that others didn't see, that I was looking for someone to advocate for me. And, and honestly, Mark, they're amazing. I feel like it was a joy. It was a pleasure. Like, every leader wants individuals like this to be on their teams and to there's a real pleasure in finding someone so talented who you can actually help into that, next path in their career, or you can actually advocate for and show others how great this person is, right? And give them that. But I never thought about the downstream effect of that to say, look, my kids have a better life because of what you did for me, right? Like, my family is better, and you changed my life. So those were the two conversations of my retirement that, first of all, I couldn't believe happened, but when they did, oh my gosh, it was so rewarding. And then you realize that's what makes it worth it. So that, having a purpose, genuinely caring about the individuals, really trying to identify talent, making others see their potential, and giving them that boost of confidence to move forward. So for me, it was very much always about, on the people side of it, the servant leadership model of, how can I make it better? If I show up in a room, it should be better for them, not worse. Like what you were saying, they should be, oh, good, Lynn's coming to this meeting, or, oh, Lynn's going to be here. So, it's going to go better, or I'm going to learn something, or I can actually talk to her about something I need to work through, right? So that was always the huge motivator for me on the people side. On the client side, being a client leader, I really wanted every client I worked with to really get the best performance review of their career every year that I worked with them, right? I wanted to work with them and brainstorm and come up with ideas that help them hit their goals, any kind of KPI they had, maybe be an early adopter to something and do something different. So that type of leadership was, hey, let's think about it, let's talk about it, let's challenge each other. Conflict is good in this case, right? Like, I'm going to come with a point of view, you're going to come with a point of view. Sometimes you're going to like mine, I'm going to like yours, other times no, but we're working through it. And let's actually end the year better than we started. That was really, from the client leadership perspective, I felt just as invested in their results as they did, right? And I really wanted to see them do well. And I think when you can kind of come to it from that direction, two different types of leadership, but both equally rewarding. And when I look back on what I was able to accomplish, those are the things that I'm really the most proud of, is the work that I was able to do, and again, help others, perform at their peak, really.
Okay, so then, I mean, this was rewarding for you. You were enjoying your career. How did you decide to kind of flip the script and go, okay, I'm done with this. It's time for advisory work. It's time for board work. This is going to be a portfolio career. Like, wow, that's a big decision. So how did you I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds terrifying. How did you move through all of that?
So, so it was something that was not sudden, right? So it was not sudden. I knew that I would probably retire early. I wasn't 100% sure when. And it was really that I was really enjoying board work that I was doing, right? I really enjoyed it. I really loved being part of a high quality, really sort of diverse background group of peers that could problem solve, could anticipate, could really be vested in the success, whether it was a for-profit company or not for profit, vested in the success of those organizations and helping them move forward. Really asking a lot of questions, giving advice, really helping some of the operators within those organizations sort of work through issues with some of the experience that I had. I found it incredibly rewarding, and it was really over a period of time. And then I also got involved in a few organizations that were board readiness programs, and I would sort of meet that peer group, and I really liked them. So I would go to those, and I'd be super energized when I left, and I'd think like, wow, like, and my brain would just be kind of firing on all cylinders of getting ready for the next one, or volunteering to maybe join one of the committees for something that they were working through. So I just really, really enjoyed it. So, and it gave me a purpose where I really felt like it hit sort of my sweet spot of what I could contribute across an enterprise, and really how I could be a member of a group of peers. Very flat aboard, right? Yes, there's a chair and all of that, but it really is a group of peers who's working together with a combined objective of making that organization successful, right, and protecting it from any downside. So, and it really was very aligned with sort of my thinking, and I also think you have to be curious and interested, right? And you have to be, and I know I keep saying that, but for me, that's a driver of things that I do. I like change. I like to change things up, right? Change doesn't scare me. I think it's exciting, right? So, so just going back to the question, it wasn't one big sweeping moment that I was like, and this is it. But it was sort of just little things here and there where I said, you know what? I've worked so hard for so long. I mean, I started babysitting when I was 10 years old, right? I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I loved working. I did. I mean, I remember getting that dollar for the dollar an hour, thinking it was the greatest thing ever when I was 10. And I just really never stopped working. So it was terrifying to say, look, I'm going to take a gamble on me. I think I can do this. I think I want to do something different. I think that I've sort of amass this sort of skill set that will be helpful in many ways to a lot of organizations, and I'm going to go for it, right? And at the same time, I'm going to also give myself the gift of little extra time, right? Little extra time for, taking care of myself, taking care of my family, pursuing hobbies that I like, doing, one big thing I learned, travel for fun is way better than travel for business. Just in case you were wondering.
Yes.
Just in case you're wondering, way better. And
Number
so
one piece
just,
of advice.
yeah, it's another great piece of advice, which, I mean, Mark, it's so funny. It's the things you don't realize because you're just going, 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 going. The first trip that my husband and I took after I retired is we went to Australia for a couple of weeks. It was wonderful. Now, I had been to Australia before, and I thought it was nice. It's amazing, right? But because then you suddenly go, for, a 3-week period, and you have this wonderful trip, and you can actually relax and enjoy it. And you actually, I didn't have any meetings like the whole time, right? I didn't have to be in a conference room the whole time. And I had plenty of time to recover from the flight, because I was at the beach. It was great. So you just start realizing that you can have a different cadence at which you're sort of working, and it can still be rewarding. And so I was ready to do that. I mean, it just really, and it was just, and all positive, right? And all positive to be able to say, okay, like I'm ready to do this, and I really want to do this, and I'm going to give it a go. What's the worst thing that happens,
Right,
right?
exactly. Well, what's interesting is I think that so many people are waiting for a defining moment where
Right.
there's whatever, a sign that, like, it's like we want someone to like walk out of the mist and say, Lynn, you're ready. And
Yeah.
it's never going to happen. So I love that it was a gradual process that was measured and intentional. And, even to just you looking at yourself and saying, you can do this. Like this is something that you can do. You will bring value here. You have the skill set. Make those connections. Even if it's something as small as walking into a board readiness program, right? And just saying, I'm going to show up and see what happens here. Like you
We're going to
said,
put
you're
it
going to
out
start
there.
meeting people. Who knows what's going to come of that, right? New connections at that level with people who think the same way you do. Think, I want to go out there and I want to make a real difference. I want to be intentional. I want to be strategic. The possibilities are quite literally endless and unpredictable in the best way.
I agree with you 100%, and require a lot of patience, right? A lot of patience,
Mm.
and there are fits and starts, and it's really interesting. There are maybe individuals that you thought, oh, I'm so lucky to know this person because they're just going to make a phone call and boom, it's going to work out, right? And maybe that's the person that for some reason isn't really involved and doesn't actually do anything. And what I also learned was to sort of let that go, because then you meet all these new people and they're all very warm. It's amazing how you discover what a deep network you have and all the warm introductions through your network. I mean, it is incredible, right? Just sort of all the connections that you can make. And then I was so surprised throughout this process, and I'm still in the process. By no means is it done. The number of people who really have stepped up or have really been so incredibly helpful, who I have just created sort of deeper relationships with as we go through this together. If you had said on day one, write all those names on a piece of paper, they wouldn't be the same names, right? Who's going to help you the most? Or who's going to maybe just say, well, that's awesome for you, Lynn. Good luck. Let me know how it goes, right? My list would not be the same. So it's also sort of letting it go and then being open to, all these, different opportunities and different relationships. And it's been actually really great.
Interesting. Now, question, because you built this career and you built it beautifully, like very independently, right? Like you made your career what you wanted it to be. You mentioned imposter syndrome once before, kind of in passing. Did you deal with that a lot? Like, were you ever self-doubting, or do you feel like you built confidence over time and never really had to deal with that?
I think if we're all being honest, sometimes we're self-doubting, right? It might be if you're just learning to ski for the first time, right? It might be if you are, lost in a city and you can't get your, phone to work to try to get out of the street
Yep.
you're on and you don't know where you're going. So I think we all have that. And I do think, of course, right? It definitely happened, but I think it's sort of pushing through it and always thinking, well, someone asked me to be here for a reason, right? Or actually, I understand the value I can bring. Let me try to, think through like what value, why am I at the table, right? What value am I bringing here? And it's different in every situation, but I think a little bit of that it's just good, right? It keeps you humble and it keeps you eager to learn and it keeps you sort of, at least me anyway, it keeps me on my toes a little bit.
Absolutely. I love that thought of I'm in this room for a reason. I will
Mm-hmm.
tell you, even when it comes to just like interviews, right? I deal with people all the time with their nerves are through the roof, and I say one thing to them that brings that down, and that is no one is spending an hour meeting with you if they don't think you're already 100% qualified to do the job. You're walking in there to show them, yes, you're right, I can do the job and I'm going to fit in here. And then they go, oh yeah, I'm in the room for a reason, aren't I?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely you are. Like no one's wasting their time on
No.
you just for fun. We're all busy. We're not doing that. It's because you belong there.
Exactly. And the thing that I would add on to that is because I think what's confusing sometimes too, and one of the things I've learned through networking and all these new connections, and some are old connections that I've, sort of, because there's all sorts of opportunities of different types of work to do and all that in this portfolio career, right? Um, is meeting up with folks that I knew before, right, and thinking, okay, like what would this look like, going forward if we were to do something, having an amazing conversation, sometimes seeing them once, two, three times, and really thinking about how can we make this work, but then ultimately it just doesn't fit, right? And whereas before that might have felt like rejection or sort of a reflection on maybe my skill set, it now I realize it just isn't the fit for today and at the time. It just doesn't fit, right? And that's an easy one. So I know, little advice for the interviewees. It has to be good on both sides or it's not going to be good for anyone. And really just embracing that and saying, okay, maybe I wasn't your choice for this particular consulting project. We didn't fit. It's okay, right? And now because there's going to be something else. But having that sort of confidence and sort of faith in the process of, right, sort of the work, the ethic, the sort of like amount of contribution, should all speak for itself when it's the right connection, and like don't try to force it. I think that's another like good thing to realize like throughout your career too.
So you're in the rooms because you belong there. You are building this, I don't know what you want to call it, second half of your career, this amazing impact driven chapter. Talk a little bit about like how you're writing that script, how you make decisions now when there's so many things that are open to you. How do you make a call where you go, this is the best option?
It's a great question, and so I read this awesome book during my process. It's called Roar. It's by Michael Clinton. I've recommended it to so many of my friends who might be thinking of, not just in my industry, just personal friends who might be thinking of that second half or that career, or if we're all healthy, we're living well into our 80s, right, and 90s, and so. What does that look like, right? And how do you have impact? And this book is amazing because it really goes through every sort of walk of life of people going back to school, doing major career changes, relationship changes, but really sort of grabbing on to those, that second half of, this should be the time of your life that you can really add a lot of impact. And it reframes your mindset away from the retirement word, right? Like, because it's like a refire, a reinvention. And so that's a good way to really start thinking about it. And being really intentional and actually not really compromising about what's important to you. So for me, it's been pretty easy, Mark. Number one is people and culture. I want to work with people I respect, honestly, people I like, and I want to work with firms that have a culture that is sort of contagious, right? And that might sound a little like, well, isn't that like a perfect world? But guess what? It exists. It really does, right? You can tell the difference when you're talking to individuals. At least I can tell the difference when talking to individuals or organizations where you think like, oh, I really like these guys, or oh wow, this is a really interesting point of view, or as I learn more about them, do a little research, this has a lot of positive. So the people and the culture, number one. So that's a fit. The second one for me is the work itself, right? Can I make a contribution? Can I add value? Is this something that I'm, intellectually stimulated by, and where I think that, again, having me in the room would be a net positive, and, me being part of this would be a good thing. And so it's really been those two, how I've decided what to do. And then there's a couple others where I've said no to a few things because it was really just a little bit not where I was in my life, right? To say like, oh, would you be interested in like, a leadership position in a portfolio company at a private equity, something like that, that I knew would be for someone their dream job. And when I sat down and thought about it, it just wasn't mine, right? It wasn't mine. I just wasn't mine, right? So but thought about, oh, but what I might like to do is be on that board, or what I might like to do is work with you and look at several of your investments you're making, right? Like maybe I could consult there. So really saying, well, not that, but actually if you really would like, to keep this relationship going, here's where I think I could add some value, right? So just really knowing what you want and maybe what wouldn't be as sort of exciting, because again, there's this freedom of choice, but you have to kind of put some guardrails on that, because then it could be like, throwing spaghetti on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Without clarity of your own, you're
Right.
never reaching
Right.
clarity for other people. Because
Right.
if you walk into a conversation without clarity internally, it's going to muddy the waters. It's going to
Right.
confuse that conversation, and people are going to walk away going like, "Wait, what?"
Well, because think about it,
That's something
right?
you want to avoid.
If it's people and culture and it's the work, it could be a number of things, right? It could be a full-time job at a company, right? If that was the amazing opportunity that comes along. It could be a board. It could be just a consulting project, right? It could be being an in-house consultant for a firm. As long as you're sort of just have the framework of those two things, it could be an interim role, right, at a company while they're trying to get sort of their marketing department set up, whatever it is. As long as you kind of are looking at it in that lens. So I feel like I've been pretty consistent looking at it those ways, which kind of opens up the field of like different opportunities that might come along.
And how exciting now that we all get to maybe follow you on LinkedIn, I would assume, and then see what you build. Because while, you may have retired on paper, I have a feeling that the impact and the results that you're going to drive for any organization you're involved with, like big things are going to happen, which is very exciting.
Hope so. I mean, right. I'm certainly working hard to make that happen.
I love it. Well, let's leave with this. I want you to think of young Lynn, right? Like early in leadership, people leadership, where you feel kind of responsible for a team, and then look back and think to yourself, like, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself to become a better leader, to make life what you want it to be? What would you tell young Lynn?
So I could only do one. I'll pick one. I had a couple. I had a couple as I was preparing for this, but I think the way you framed that question, I'll do one, and it is don't be afraid of conflict. And as a matter of fact, embrace it because it's only with conflict that you can move forward. It helps problem solve. There's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. But I think that that's something that I wish I had really embraced earlier because once I learned how to do that, it really is sort of the ultimate sort of equalizer of, okay, we've all got a voice. Let's get it out. Let's get it on the table. How do we sort of take each other's point of view and move forward? How do I have a conversation that's difficult, right, with someone? Because letting it fester is never going to be the right resolution. So I would say that's one that I wish I had learned earlier in my career and really used as an advantage, sooner. So that's one advice I would give. The other one, and I'll just tell you, get a good
Please.
financial planner as early as you can. That's just life advice, right? Get a great financial planner, make a plan, because all of this was only possible for me to sort of take that bet on myself because I knew the numbers, I knew the scenarios. I had a team that I was working with. And look, we started talking about this probably 15 years before it happened, right? If I was going to do this, what would I need to do today to get to the point that I would want to do that? And that's that investment in yourself, right? Really make sure that you put yourself in a position that you have the freedom of choice. Because without that, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, right? So that's one of the things that I did for myself early on. That has been probably one of the best decisions I ever made.
Uh, I love my financial planner. Shout out to Ashley Foster. She is the coolest. So like I am right there with you. It was the best
Yes.
decision I ever made. An accountant and a financial
Yep.
planner as like my team is the best
It's
decision I made. I love that advice.
it's so important, and I
Beautiful.
think if one thing that you do for yourself this year, if anyone's listening, do that. Right?
Do that. Walk away right now and go call
Exactly.
somebody. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being here. It was so wonderful to get to chat with you, go deeper, learn more about you. People can find you on LinkedIn, Lynn Serpico. Follow along, see what she's doing. I know for me and for you, networking conversations and opening doors to new opportunities is something we're both always open to.
Definitely.
Uh, well, thank you so much again for your
Thanks, Mark.
time. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you
Take
next
care.
time.
Bye bye.